There we go. Friday at last when we're taping this. It's been quite a week and quite a month happening. I'm so glad that you're here, Devon, to do my Ask Me Another for the Rise Above the Noise series that I'm doing. So before I get started, as I normally do, I want to give a digital marketing tip. And as you probably know, and probably anyone who follows me anywhere, I am obsessing right now about email marketing for the holiday season, because there is just so much noise everywhere. And I know everyone's inboxes are getting filled with already like panicking about the holidays, but it's still the best digital marketing platform that a small business owner can use. We've talked about that. It just has the highest return on investment. And I've said it's because you're serving up something that people have asked you to keep in touch with. They want to hear from you. You have something that you're offering to them, which they want. They've asked for it. But a lot of people don't always know what to put in an email. And usually what I tell my clients is make it short and sweet and give them something of value. Give them a message from yourself, a resource, some kind of a resource, helpful article, and then maybe your call to action. And people are still like, I just don't know. So I did find this graphic that I wanted to share. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
There we go.
You see it? Okay. So these are some ideas. And if you guys are listening to this as a recording, you can actually go back a few seconds, pause it, and write these things down. Some of them are really clear cut, right? Like a holiday sale, clearly. You want to get that out there, and you want to get that out there soon. Hanukkah's in like 2 weeks from today. Gift certificates, same thing. Free shipping. Like make it short and sweet. Don't put everything in one email. Send a few once a week or so, depending on what feels right for you and your clients. A lot of companies are having holiday giveaways or contests, so you want to get that out there. Party ideas, that's very helpful if that's the kind of business you're in. I think most of the people that I work with might be focusing right now on either they're artisans and they're having a sale, or they're going to be at a vendor event and they want you to come and support them and buy from them, of course. So put that up. And also a lot of my clients are offering gift certificates. And so email marketing, whichever platform that you use, makes it super easy to get a gift certificate out there to people. And it makes it so easy for them to give gifts. I mean, you're going to make it easy for them. Maybe you're just educating them on something. So that's what people say, like, what do I say, right? So you want to make it super simple. You just want to put in the headline, what are you offering? This particular one is 65% off membership. Yours might be 20% off a gift certificate, or buy one, get one free. What are you offering? And then how is that going to help the reader, right? So it's like, make your gift giving easy, or give the gift of health, or whatever it is. And then what do they need to do? So just make a quick, very noticeable call to action button, which will help them do exactly what you want it to do. Short, simple, sweet, and really clear on what action they should take. And I guess I can't say it enough because I have one more slide and it still says keep it simple. A picture, maybe a paragraph or a line, and a call to action. If you do nothing else, do these three things: a picture, a paragraph, a call to action. There are mixed feelings about the pictures, but that just makes it short and sweet, as long as your picture tells people what your email is about. So I hope that was helpful. Now let's see. Stop sharing my screen. Yes, now we're back to you. So now it is my pleasure to formally introduce my friend Devon Grilly. Devon is with Coach on Fire. I'm going to read her official biography. Devon is a mom, a teacher, a scientist, an engineer, and a professional coach. She's a seeker and a problem solver, and it's her main goal in life to wake up feeling excited about what's next. She has an interesting superpower, which I will ask her about later. Let's see what else I have. So today's topic will be helping us to, oh, where did I go? Find our authentic no. And she does have some special offers for people listening today. But really, I just wanted to dive right in, Devon, and get going. You've got so much good stuff for us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm feeling like, oh, nervous, but I'll go over it as we go
It's
through.
all good. It's you and me.
So, yeah, this is like a tidbit of what I'll be putting together as a workshop, and it'll be like a few hours to really work through things. So figuring out how to distill that down to a few minutes of helpful information without overwhelming people was something I had to think about.
But it's so important, right? Like no can be so powerful.
Yes, and like in really wide ranging ways, right? So when I think about even to like the level of all of the things we've heard about sexual harassment in the workplace and things like that. Mm-hmm. And it never just goes like right to that level. It's all these little things where like we don't know how to like set a boundary.
Yes.
Like some things uncomfortable where we're just like trying to be nice and try not to judge and like, okay, fine. And then like, whoa, how did we get here? You know, It's like a snowball effect. So the more we can practice saying no, even to small things, it sets up like our foundation for being able to have those healthy boundaries that are going to help us to be happier at our work, I think.
Yeah. So what would be like an example other than the sexual harassment, which is so interesting because I found myself a few weeks ago at a networking event. And it wasn't until I left and thought about it the next day that I went, I should have set a boundary there. Like it wasn't anything big. Mm-hmm. It was just like, no, this is not it. Like this is a networking. This is a business networking thing. This is not that flirty thing.
Yeah. But it's all those things that later were like, oh, it leaves us not feeling good. Yeah. And those are areas where we have an opportunity to think about, okay, if that something similar were to happen again, how would I like to respond?
Yes.
And I find like a lot of women that I talk to, we just don't have the tools. Like when we were little girls, like my little girl, like we're taught to, you know, like don't argue, just go with the flow, like be nice to everybody. Like we're supposed to be nice. Yeah. So I had like that nice girl chip on my shoulder for a long time. Oh, me too. And I think we all kind of have that moment where we're also like, even in like in non-harassment situations, but just other things that like come out of the blue, it feels like, and it can be like a slap in the face was when I first noticed it. For example, like when I was in graduate school, I really wanted to like impress my advisor. And so I did all the things, you know, including things that were not related to my research at all. Like editing all the grants because I was really good at grammar and spelling and technical writing. You know, helping to like smooth over relations with other professors because he was kind of like an angsty person. But then, you know, when it came time to review my work, he had the impression that I wasn't dedicated to my research because I was doing all these other things. And like, these are the things you asked me to do.
Oh, interesting.
And I think this happens to women in all kinds of work environments. And Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant had like a series in, I think it was the New York Times a few years ago, where they talked about these issues. And one of them is office housework. And those are like all those tasks that like, it's really important that they get done. Women almost always are the ones that volunteer to do them, but they're not promotable work items.
Right.
Because they're not directly creating income for the company.
Right.
but somebody's got to do them. So we're always the ones that are like, okay, fine, I'll do that, you know, because we're trying to be helpful.
Right.
But then they're not valued.
So what do we do with that? Knowing that that's a thing, right? Knowing like this was three different things that you kind of talked about, right? Like the flirty thing, the wanting to impress somebody thing, and the somebody's got to do it thing. How do we say no to those things?
The first thing that's really important is to like have like an internal barometer of what's important to you.
Okay.
So in the workbook that I'll send out to people, there's exercises in there to really get clear on like, what are your values? What are the things that are most important to you? You know, where are the things that when you contribute to them, you feel really good about it? So even if somebody else doesn't recognize it, are you at least going to feel good about the contribution that you made? So that there's that return on your own investment of time. Like the most important resource that we have that's non-renewable is our time, right? So if we're clear with ourselves about what is important to me, what are the things that fill me up, then I have a clearer reason for why I'm going to say yes or no to something. Does that make sense?
It does, but I can envision myself, like when you were talking about that kitchen thing, I clearly put myself in the kitchen at a previous job cleaning up people's coffee cups, like clearly. Now I thought it made me feel good, right? Like I felt, oh, I'm doing this for these people and it made me feel good. But you're right. It had nothing to do with my work. It wasn't a promotable thing. It wasn't something that added to the productivity of the company. So
Right.
How do I make that distinction between, gee, it made me feel good because I'm a giver and it made me feel like I was giving, versus those other things that you're talking about?
Yeah, so then it's helpful to do things like keeping track of how much time you're actually spending doing those kinds of activities.
Okay.
So you can kind of build awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We can't change anything until we're aware of what's going on. So one of the best things to start doing, whether at work or at home, is to just get data. So I'm a scientist and I love data, and people can't argue with data, right?
Okay, yeah.
There's all kinds of great free apps that you can put in like all your tasks and just click and it'll record and just see, like take stock. Are you really, maybe it's just my own perception. I feel like I'm the one that always does the dishes or whatever, but maybe that's not true. And until I gather the data, like then I can start to make good decisions about it. Maybe it, like at first it feels good. Like when I do it on Monday, I feel like, oh, I'm being a helpful person, right? But then when I'm still the only one who's cleaning out the coffee cups on Friday, I start to get into resentment mode, right? So it could be a scaling thing. So start keeping track of like how much time are you spending on these different activities, and what are the ones that are really draining you. So I think the other thing that really stood out to me, and I'm just looking over at my my workshop notes because I want to make sure I have this statistic right. But they had for every 1,000 people at work, 80 more women than men are going to burn out. So the burnout rate is much higher in women than in men. And it's part of that giving nature. Because it's just like our go-to. Like we're nurturers. We take care of things. We take care of people. But if we're not mindful about like our own internal reserves, that can lead to burnout. Because it's very easy to switch from like helper mode to resentment mode if there's not like a return on the energy.
So that's so interesting. And it makes so total sense. So a lot of people that are in my community or that I work with or network with are solo business owners or independent professionals. And I know that many of us give a lot. We don't see our value. We give away our time. We give away our resources. What kind of suggestions do you have for us to what kind of boundaries can we set? What kind of tools can we use to make our time more effective for us?
Yeah. So once you have that awareness of how you're spending your time and how much it really is, like sometimes we're surprised and we're like, whoa, that's like another full-time job that I'm taking on right there with all these like little things I'm doing just to help people out.
Yes.
Then we have some information that we can start to use. Like if it's in a situation where there's a boss that just I'm their go-to person, and maybe they're not even aware of the amount of time. Once I have the data, I can go to them and be like, listen, I'm spending this much time on these things. But when we get to review time, those aren't coming up as what's being valued. So how could I prioritize my time? So if you are in like a situation where somebody else is like in charge of your time,
yes,
having that data can be really helpful for opening positive dialogue about like, help me prioritize.
right.
Like, what do you see the value in the work that I'm bringing and my skills,
right,
so that I'm doing what I need to do for the company?
right.
As a solo person, oftentimes it's boundaries with like family members and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or even our friends that want our help for free. You know?
Yeah, could you just look at this for me? Or, you know, the emails that keep coming and coming, or the quick calls. Yes. So how do you set those boundaries without feeling icky?
So that's when the values can come in and be important. You know, like what are the values? And if it feels icky, it's usually because it's not honoring a value. So like when you can identify and name what is the value that's not being honored, then you have some language, or even just like internal, because it's usually not like what we're going to say to the person. It's like what the voice in our head is saying about ourselves.
Yes.
So if I understand my values and why that particular task is pushing my buttons, then I can change that internal dialogue to be about, you know, it's important for me to say no here because that really goes against my value of, you know, self-care. Or one of my values is it's important to me to feel independent. So when things start to feel like an obligation, that pushes me into the red. Like,
Gotcha.
and so the more I'm able to name that, the easier it is to change my internal story about why it's important for me to say no. And it's not about me being like, oh, I'm so selfish because I'm saying no to this thing and like churning up all this guilt and shame. But instead being able to say, no, I'm honoring my value here of being independent because this is really challenging my ability to be independent.
That was brilliant. Awesome.
In terms of talking with other people, it actually helps to write out like a script for yourself and practice saying it with a friend, which sounds like the opposite of being authentic. But if it's not something that I have like in my bag of tricks that I'm used to doing, it helps to just practice it.
Right.
See how it feels. Maybe you want to tweak like the wording a little bit.
Yeah.
To like take some of the edge out of it, you know? But it doesn't need to be like this complicated thing. There's like that saying, like, no is a complete sentence, right? But it's like our internal, like, I feel like I have to justify if I'm not clear with myself on why it's important for me to say no.
Right. And so the workbook that you were mentioning, which you were very kind enough to offer to people who email you through or contact you through this. Sorry. Let's see. That those are some of the exercises I think that you lead people through, right? Figuring out what are their core values and how do they feel about these things and which ones are kind of prioritized. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like a preview of the work I do as a coach, which I call it like the Blaze Your Path process. So figuring out like your beliefs, what are those values? What are those drivers that are really important to you? What are your gifts, right? So your passions, the things that you love. Those are the important skills. Like when we're using them, we feel good about the work that we're doing. And then we start to plan our actions around them. Like, these are all the tasks that I'm doing in the day. What's honoring my values? What's not? The ones that aren't honoring my values, how could I tweak them so that they are? And then I start filling that bucket.
That's fascinating. That's so interesting.
I see your video is frozen, but I can still hear you.
No. All right. Well, as long as we can see yours.
Okay.
That's what's important. I'm going, maybe, no, still not there. I'm going to read a couple questions that came in because we asked for questions since we were pre-recording, and somebody asked, it's easier to say no to something that you don't want to do, but it's harder to say no to things that you do want to do, but maybe you don't have the time to do. And so she asks, what is the best way to prioritize the things in your life that are the ones that you want to do, but you don't have time to do?
Yeah, so I love that question. And there's like two things in there. One is, what do you say, right? And then the other is like the internal story and the feelings about it. So if it's something that you love to do, but you don't have time, why don't you have the time? So this is where like going through the values exercise and looking at all the things on your plate can help you start reprioritizing, right? So maybe there's something else that you're doing, but it's really feels like an obligation. But maybe it's not true. Like maybe it's not something that you actually have to do. It's just an assumption that we've created about that task. Maybe that could get taken off the plate, and so this other thing can be put on. Sometimes when it comes to like volunteer work, like we have like such a burden, especially like I know as a mom, there's so like always this something going on with like my daughter's school, right?
Yeah.
And I can't do all of the things.
Right.
And so a lot of it is dealing like with my own internal guilt about that.
Yes.
And I think like the best thing is knowing that the more that we are taking care of ourselves, the more we're actually able to do for others. I have I'm looking back at my notes, and so in that New York Times article with Sheryl Sandberg, she says, you know, women and men achieve the highest performance and experience the lowest burnout when they prioritize their own needs along with the needs of others, so that ultimately they can give more. And I think that goes to like, you know, we're on the airplane and they're talking about like in the event the oxygen mask comes down, you have to put your own mask on first, because if you're passed out because you didn't get your oxygen, you're not helping anybody.
True.
So when it comes to like trying to do all of the things, we really have to bring it down and be honest about saying, you know, I really would love to help, but I've stretched myself too thin right now, but you know, please keep in contact with me and maybe things will be more clear for the next fundraiser or whatever.
Right. That's right. And so hard to put, I mean, for so many years, I put that aside, right? And then, but I've always been happy that I was able to develop my professional self so that when all of those obligations, the kids, the school, the activities, the sports, all of that went away, I did have for myself. And so now I'm a much better mom of adults and a counselor to people that I work with, because I was able to set some limitations and also develop myself. We're having I'm going to save that story for another time. There's a woman experiencing that right now, and she's on a group, and she's just getting so much support from this particular group, which is like, no, don't fall into that guilt. Like you're doing this because eventually you're going to be a stronger person for it. So you have to do it for the sake of your family.
Right.
So that was the next question too, like somebody else too, when you really want to help or volunteer, but you know you can't, like literally, what do you say? So you had alluded to that. So like maybe you can give this woman a script, right?
Yeah, so saying like I'm just not able to do that right now. And usually like if you're a person that's seeking out volunteers, the worst is when people like hem and haw and give you like the maybe answer, because you have to keep checking back in with them.
Right.
Braving the Wilderness, I put as my favorite book, but I think I might be leaning towards the newest one that I just read, which is Dare to Lead. And for Brene Brown lovers out there.
Those are both by Brene Brown, is that correct?
Brene Brown, I love her so much. And in the newest book, which is about like being a manager or a leader in a company situation, but even, you know, we're all leaders in one way or another.
True.
And she said that like their mantra was that clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And a lot of the problems that come up in leadership roles is, you know, aside from not having healthy boundaries, is we're trying too much to like talk around issues. And so things are not clear, and that's actually unkind. Whereas like if I'm just honest and I say, you know, I can't help you at this fundraiser that's coming up right now, but keep me on the list, and hopefully next time I'll have the ability to volunteer.
Right.
Or, you know, if it's something I can honestly do without it stretching me thin, maybe I would say like, but I can pass on the information to my coworkers. Maybe somebody in there has some time to volunteer at your event or whatever. So
you'd be helpful in whatever way you can, but clear is kind. I love that. I wrote it down. I love that. It also goes back to the book that I keep referring to, the 4 Agreements. And so many of us would be like, oh, but what if they think I'm selfish? Or what if they think I'm not a good mom, or I'm not a good business person? But really, if you know you're doing your best and you have said the words that are true, what they think of you is not really your business.
Right. I have no control over that.
You have no control, because you're doing the absolute best you can, and you know you're being a good person and working as hard as you can. So clear as kind is awesome. I have a few good questions here. And this is, I think, more about focusing on you. So first I want to find out about the Barbara Walters effect. Your superpower is the Barbara Walters effect. Tell me more.
I think it comes from just being a listener more than a talker. So when people are sharing something, I really listen. And I'm finding that is kind of rare in this world. Most of the time when I'm talking to someone, I can notice that there's a tendency to be formulating a response or trying to think of a way to contribute. And that's not natural to me. So like I have a hard time with small talk, because that's like the back and forth banter is not my wheelhouse. Gotcha. But if somebody sits down next to me and starts talking and I don't interrupt them, they have a tendency to really go deep with the conversation. And not because I'm not asking nosy questions or anything like that, but they just end up opening up, and then they go like, wow, I didn't think I was going to share that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do they cry? Like everybody cried when Barbara Walters interviewed them?
Sometimes.
What? Oh, wow.
And I think it helps that I don't, you know, I can create space for that, for heavy things, and not get uncomfortable. Like so many people are really uncomfortable with crying. Yeah. That a lot of us, I think, are craving the space to be able to cry with somebody.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. I have a question from our friend Nicole. Nicole wants to know how, and she's asking for tools or techniques, do you help your clients light their fire or find their fire? It's a good question.
Yeah. Again, that goes to starting with, what are the values? What are the things that really make you excited when you start talking about them? And usually as I'm listening to somebody talk, I can tell when they hit something that they're really passionate about, because the energy in their voice changes. So as a coach, I'm listening for that, and I'm taking note, and I'm saying, no, I noticed when you started talking about this, they got really animated. and so we start to like uncover what those passions are, and those are the things that light our fire. Those are the things that, like, if we think about, we have a bucket of energy every day and we're always scooping things out, like by doing all these tasks and things, like what are the things that are putting the water back in, um, the things that we have that are our natural gifts. One of the exercises in there is a really uncomfortable exercise in the workbook that I did for myself. Anything I ask people do, I've also done for myself. And that's to ask friends and colleagues, like, what is it that you do that is really special, but you don't realize that that's something that's uniquely special to you? Because sometimes we just don't have the awareness, right? So again, it's getting aware of, what are my special gifts? What are my superpowers? And knowing that when I use them, those are the things that light me up and I get really excited about it.
That's awesome. I love that. What a hard question. I'll have to think about that myself.
You ever want to get a text back from somebody that like makes you cry, like ask them what's special about me?
Yeah. I've talked to, when I teach my classes or work with my groups, I often ask people to, as you know, ask for testimonials, or ask them, what is it why did you work with me? And what was it like to work with me? And people are humble and they don't want to ask, but then when they do ask and they get these answers that you're talking about, it does feel really good to them. And again, like you said, they get really emotional about what's happening. It's a little confusing to me because I'm frozen up there, but as long as people can see you, that's the main thing. So Nicole also wants to know, what does stop playing small mean to you?
So I was somebody who was on like a very clear trajectory that was very safe, as a classroom teacher. It's all about finding like a good school, which I had, and making it past like the third year, which is tenure. And then you're just supposed to keep going, right? Until you retire. So to me, that was playing small, because there were lots of other things that I was called to do, but it required taking a risk. So when you're in that place where like, that what you're doing isn't serving you anymore, but it's safe. And so we trick ourselves into thinking like it's fine, but it's really not fine. Like, we're starting to get tired all the time. More feelings of depression or just fatigue, or maybe, I'm constantly sick, but I don't know why. Those are all signs that, we're playing small.
Gotcha.
We're denying that bigger vision that's calling to us.
And I'm just looking to see about this one too. So that's I'm going to go right to my question. When you say that, and then I think about what it is who you're working. So who are the people that you intend to work with, and what will be the changes? How do you lead them through these exercises to help them figure out, all right, I need to live larger. I need to light my fire, but I'm afraid. Like, how does that happen? What happens next?
So the women that I usually work with are people that have been really successful. They've they've been productive and go-getters. They've followed their path, checked off all the things on the list, gotten the promotion, and somehow they feel like they're moving further and further away from the things that actually make them like their job. But they're not sure what to do next. Because it's not laid out. Like they're looking ahead. They see like, okay, if I get the promotion to the next level, this is what life is going to look like. And I don't like that at all. I don't want to sit in meetings all day.
Yeah.
This is not what I came here to do. But now what? And so then it can be like this kind of freezing feeling. And I know, because I felt it, or you're just like, I can't even think about that right now because it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put it off,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got sick. And then I injured myself. And so like all these things from the universe started like piling up on me until I finally like was stuck with bed rest for months
Oh
because
my
I had
God.
spinal surgery. And then I had to sit still long enough to think about, okay, if this had been the end, what would that mean? And would I be satisfied with that? And so asking like the bigger reflection questions, um, which can be hard, like especially if you're doing it all by yourself. There's what I hope that I do for my clients is provide like a gentler path than waiting until I had no other choice than to lie still and reflect on things for a few months. Um, I would have loved to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and to listen to these big questions that I was asking myself, like, what is my life purpose? What are the things that bring me joy? Um, because when I'm in that grind, I can't think about that. I'm surviving, right?
Yeah.
So figuring out how to get out of just survival mode so I could do the things that would help me to thrive. That's what I want to help people to do.
That's perfect, right? Do it before. We hear that all the time. Oh, I can't stand my job and I'm sick and my allergies and my back and my stomach and I'm getting fat or I'm getting skinny or I'm getting whatever, right? Like my leg, my back, my whatever. That's all. So many of those things are manifestations of not living your path, right? Not lighting up your fire.
Right.
And life is too short. And a lot of people, I would imagine, feel like, well, I have to do it because I have to provide for my family. But if there's somebody giving them support, how to transition thoughtfully.
Yes. So coming up with a plan, knowing where you're going and not just what you're avoiding, right? I could list all the things I didn't like about my job, but until I like was forced to lie still and think about, okay, if I made a clean slate, which it was clear at that point I wasn't going to be able to stand on my feet for 8 hours a day anymore. I had to have a clean slate. So it's like taking all assumptions off the table. What are my non-negotiables? What has to be there for me to feel good about what I'm doing and to come home and be like, wow, I can't believe I get to do that again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So working through that ahead of time would definitely make for a gentler transition. And knowing where I was going, like I had all this motivation to do amazing work, but I had no idea like what that was. I just knew that I couldn't do this anymore.
I think there's probably a lot of people who are listening or who are out there in the world that are like, yep, that's me. Well, how can they get in touch with you? What would it be like to start a conversation with you and see if this would be a good thing to do for them?
Yes, if they email me, we can put it in the notes after,
Yep.
devon@devongrilly.com. I can set up a chat either through Zoom, or if they live local in Massachusetts, we can meet for coffee and just talk about like what are the visions, like what's going on, and see if working together would be appropriate, or maybe I know somebody who would be an even better fit for them. But just getting the dialogue going is the first step.
Awesome. And I know that you have a call to action, and I'll put that in the notes as well, that they can download your Blaze Your Path workbook where they can get started on some of this work and then contact you to complete the work.
Yeah.
I would imagine. And then you also, we were talking recently about this assessment that you do and that you were offering. I remember looking at what other people were doing. You were offering a wonderful offer that you're bringing here today too. Can you tell us about what that assessment is and what it looks like and what it brings to us?
Absolutely. So I'm certified in the Energy Leadership Index assessment, which if you're in like the corporate world, you might know of. It's on like the Forbes top 10 list for executives. And, you know, it's put in the same category as things as like the Clifton Strengths or Myers-Briggs. Those tests are really personality tests. And so like if you took them 10 years ago, they'd be pretty much the same today. You know, you're a visual learner or you like a challenge, things like that. This one is more of an awareness assessment. So like all the things that we talked about, how am I approaching this? Like, how am I showing up? What are my filters that are helping me to make these decisions? And are they still working for me? That's what comes up through this assessment. And it's based on these 7 levels of energy, which are everything from like being, like seeing things from the point of view of like a victim. Everything's happening to me. It's out of my control. Or like the point of view of being angry with everything. Like we get into the blame mode. Or I'm the caretaker and I'm trying to fix everything. You know, I've got my fingers in all the holes and I'm trying to make it all work. Understanding that is the first step. So everything hinges on first being aware of it. And so this is a really good awareness building tool. And usually it's like $200 or above. Like if you're at the corporate level, they're going to charge you like $500 for it.
That's what I've seen, like over $500 for them. Yeah.
Since I just want to offer this to everybody because I think like the awareness is so, so important, I'm offering it right now through the end of the year for $99.
Wow. So people should jump on that. And again, they can contact you through devongrilly.com. So look at what you've done. So they can get this workbook, start the work, take the assessment for a really great introduction to kind of like what their personality is. And then they can figure out whether or not to work with you to kind of blaze their path, right? Light their fire. I'm so glad that we spent this time going over all of this. Thank you, Devon, for showing up with me today. I couldn't hear your leaf blowers at all.
Oh, good.
Are they still going?
They just finished, of course.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's it. I'm going to post this. Everybody will be able to see it on Wednesday, and I will see you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, Devon.